Hello everybody. In the last few lectures, we have been discussing externalities and the Pigovian approach of tackling the externalities. In the Pigovian approach of tackling the externalities, if there are negative externalities, Pigou has suggested a tax, namely the Pigovian tax, and he has suggested that the tax amount should be equal to the difference between the marginal social cost and the marginal private cost. According to Pigou, if the government intervenes and taxes the polluter, the problem of pollution would be solved. So, in the Pigovian approach, taxation is an important policy instrument and government intervention is very important. Ronald Coase, another economist, takes a different approach than Arthur Pigou. So, to his credit, his theory is known as Coase theorem. So, what is the central argument in the Coase theorem? The central argument in the Coase theorem is that Pigovian taxes and government intervention would be unnecessary if the problem of externality, including the environmental problem, is solved by the bargaining approach. So, as per Coase theorem, whenever there is a market inefficiencies resulting from externalities, as we had discussed earlier, there is a shift in equilibrium from a socially optimum. What Coase proposes is that the private citizens or private firms are able to negotiate a mutually beneficial, socially desirable solution. And he says that government intervention is not necessary. However, he says that this mutually beneficial, socially desirable solution can be negotiated provided two conditions are met. So, according to Coase theorem, they can negotiate a mutually beneficial, socially desirable solution provided there is no cost associated with the negotiation process. It means that it does not cost you any money for bargaining, right? We do not require any courts or any lawyers for negotiation. And second is, his condition is that the property rights should be well defined, right? So, in other words, government intervention like Pigovian taxes are unnecessary. He says that it is not required to tax the polluter, okay, or to give some subsidies to the bystander. Instead, whatever cash flow has to result, that cash flow has to result from the bargaining between the polluter and the affected party. So, in the Coase theorem, agents means the polluter and the third party can bargain their way to a Pareto optimum. Pareto optimum is social optimum, and that Pareto optimum, he says, is the same irrespective of whether externalities imposed by one party or the other party on the first. So that is also an interesting thing. I will explain this in bit detail later. But what he says that irrespective of who owns the properties, there can still be a same Pareto optimum, a same socially desirable outcome. So, as I said, the Coase theorem was proposed by Ronald Coase in his paper, The Problem of Social Cost, in 1960. And he has given a solution for handling the situation of externalities, which is a different solution than what Coase is proposing. In his solution, there is no government intervention and there is a bargaining between the parties involved, which he believes leads to an efficient outcome, right? So, we will understand this Coase theorem in the next lecture of mine by taking a very interesting example of contamination of river by farmer, which has an adverse impact on fishermen downstream. Hello friends, we are discussing a very interesting theorem, namely Coase theorem, and I had stated the theorem in my earlier lecture. The speciality of this theorem is that Coase is arguing that the Pigovian taxes and government intervention would be unnecessary if the problem can be solved by the affected parties by bargaining, and this is generally the case. So, for dealing with any externality, especially the negative externality, he proposes that the solution is bargaining and not taxation. So, we will look at his theorem by considering a very interesting example. So, I consider the problem of river pollution. So, the problem of river pollution or river pollution externality is as follows. Let us consider that there are two stakeholders. One is the farmer and other is the fisherman. Both depend on the river for a survival. Farmer uses the river water for irrigating his crops, and the fisherman uses the river water for fishing. Farmer, because he has a farm at the upstream, he would apply the water from the river and use it for irrigation, as well as he would apply certain fertilizers and pesticides which would ultimately be indirectly thrown into the or disposed into the river. So why is the farmer applying the fertilizer and pesticides? He is applying the fertilizer and pesticides for increasing his agricultural production to improve the productivity, because of which he would get more money from the market. However, this activity of farming creates negative externality of river pollution, and it would harm the interests of the farmer, of the fisherman who is staying downstream of the river. So, in the standard Pigovian approach, Pigou would say that you need to tax the farmer for polluting the river, right? Coase, however, takes a different view. He says that in a scenario where the farmer has clearly defined divisible and defendable property rights, if he has the right to use the pesticides on his crops, right? Though this activity generates a negative externality, it is in the interest of both the farmer as well as fisherman to come together and negotiate a solution. So he is proposing that both the stakeholders would come together and they would negotiate a solution. Now, why would that happen? So this is a pictorial view of the farmer owning the river and the fisherman catching the fish. The fisherman who is catching the fish, he would come to the farmer and he would try to negotiate, and he would try to give some money to the farmer as a way of bargaining. Now, why would he do that? Why would the fisherman give money to the farmer who is polluting the river and causing the damage to the farmer, to the fisherman? So, Coase says that we need to look at the problem from a different perspective, and he explains this with the help of the following explanation. So, what you see here is a graph. In this graph, you see that there is on the x-axis there is a fertilizer use, and the y-axis there is a marginal effect of externality, right? We know that the farmer benefits because of application of fertilizers. So you see that there is a curve which ends at Q2, the marginal benefit curve which ends at Q2 on the x-axis. So the area of the triangle which is under marginal benefit curve, that is the total benefit which the farmer gets. Okay. And why is the farmer getting the benefit? Because of application of fertilizers. So what amount of fertilizer is he applying? He is applying a fertilizer equal to the quantity Q2. So from the graph, if the farmer does not care for the river pollution, and if he does not negotiate with the fisherman, he would apply fertilizer equal to the quantity Q2 and thereby pollute the river, but still the farmer is on the profit side because the farmer is going to benefit because of use of fertilizers, right? Now, what happens to the fisherman because of this pollution, because of the use of Q2. You see that as the application of fertilizers or pesticides, it increases, the damage which is caused to the fisherman would increase. And it is shown by the curve which is labeled as marginal damage curve. So you see there are two curves. One is the marginal benefit curve which applies to the farmer, and there is a marginal damage curve which applies to the fisherman. So what you see over here is the marginal damage to the farmer or to the fisherman would increase with the application of fertilizer. Now why would that increase? It would increase because the river would get more polluted, and if the river gets more polluted, the catch, the fish which the fisherman would anyway fish would be reduced. Right? The quantity of the fish he would be getting would be reduced because of polluted river. Right? So because of that, what would the fisherman do? The fisherman would come and negotiate with the farmer. Let us say that the two sit together, have a tea, and they negotiate a solution. Why would the farmer agree to the negotiation? If you have a careful look at this graph, and let me show you that there is a negotiation, and the negotiation settles at Q1, where the farmer agrees to a optimal solution of applying a fertilizer, reduced quantity of fertilizer equal to Q1, right? So where Q1 is now the reduced amount of fertilizer being applied by farmer after bargaining. Why has the farmer bargained, and why has the farmer agreed to a reduced use of fertilizer Q1 instead of Q2? So for that, let us consider another graph. You see over here that the farmer has owned farmer is owning the river, and he has earlier applied Q2. So the benefit to the farmer, if he is applying the fertilizer Q2, is a loss to the fisherman. And when by bargaining the farmer agrees to cut down his consumption to Q1, then the area which is enclosed and which is shown by color blue as Q1 red dot and Q2, which is the blue colored area, that is basically the prevention of loss to the fisherman, or it is the reduction in the damage caused to the fisherman because of reduction in the fertilizer used by the farmer. Right? So you see that a large area which is shaded blue is the prevention of loss to the fisherman. Now let us compare what the farmer loses with this area. So the next graph which I am showing here, it shows the benefit to the farmer, reduction in the benefit to the farmer as he applies the quantity Q2. Okay. So you see over here that the area now shaded yellow, which is Q1 red dot Q2 back to Q1, that is now the loss in the benefit, loss or reduced benefit to the farmer when he is applying the quantity Q1. So the value that the farmer loses, right, as highlighted below the marginal benefit curve and shaded yellow, is because of the farmer agreeing to a quantity Q1, right, instead of Q2. Now why would the farmer agree to a quantity Q2? This is because you see that the fisherman is gaining more than what the farmer is losing in terms of his benefit, and that gain of the fisherman he is agreeing to share with the farmer, right? So it would be in a way a gain to both. So if they bargain well, you see that still if the fisherman agrees to compensate for the loss which the farmer has made, you see that if you compare this blue curve, blue shaded area with the yellow shaded area, you still find that the fisherman has benefited, or his damage is minimized because of the bargaining. So this is the core of Coase theorem. So what does Coase propose? He says that if they bargain well and if the property rights are well defined, then there is no need of the government intervening. It would be a win-win situation to both the parties. Thanks all. We will now discuss some limitations of Coase theorem, or in other words, we will discuss when the Coase theorem works and when it fails to give us a solution. The assumptions in Coase theorem is, or the conditionalities for the Coase theorem is, that the property rights should be well defined. If the property rights are to be well defined, they should be enforceable in the courts, right? Because courts are the places where the property disputes are settled. So the second point in the coercion approach is the transaction cost should be zero. But if the property rights are to be enforced in the court, the transaction cost will not be zero. One needs to pay the lawyer, one needs to spend some time in the courts to make sure that the property rights are enforced. So, in that manner, it's not that effective because the bargaining often leads to the property disputes, and the property disputes are settled not by further bargaining amongst the parties, but they are settled in the court, which entails the transaction cost. By transaction cost, I mean the time spent in the court, the money spent for the lawyers, right? So this is one of the difficulty in course theorem implementation. Uh, if you take some practical examples where the coercion approach has worked, you see that the slide which I had shown here, it is related to a power plant company in America. It was known as American Electric Power Company, and this is the story of 2002, way back, where American Electric Power Company, it because it had a power plant, coal-based power plant, which generated a lot of fly ash and created negative externality. They went and had a bargaining with the residents. About 221 residents were there, and without any government intervention, the bargaining resulted in the residents being offered money for their land. Uh, this money which they were offered was above the market value. So the residents, they took this option, they sold their land to the power company, and they went elsewhere and settled, right? So this, according to coercion theorem, uh, is the efficient outcome. But if you think at it critically, think about this problem critically, you would understand that the coercion approach has not resulted in reducing the pollution of the coal power plant or incentivizing the power plant to install pollution control equipments. What happened was, in this case, it simply went by market logic. Market logic in the sense that the power company was getting a lot of profit selling electricity to its consumers, and the stakeholders, that is 221 residents around that power plant, it was easy for the power company to compensate them, right? Because of the profit it generated. But if you look at it from a holistic perspective, the environmental bad, that is the pollution, was not tackled. So this is a problem with coercion approach. The second case study I would point out is about Dow Chemicals. It is again a multinational which produces lot many chemicals, including the chemicals used in refrigeration plant. Now, what happened was, this Dow Chemicals, because it is a chemical company, it spilled chemicals, and that dripped, that percolated into the drinking water, as a result of which the town was affected adversely. Now, when the town was adversely affected, though in a coercion approach, what was expected was the chemical company, it goes and have a discussion with the residents which were affected. What happened was, in actual practice, the residents went to the court. The residents went to the court, and they filed a lawsuit. And once the lawsuit was filed, the Dow Chemicals company again bought the land of the residents there, and the town was abandoned. So look at it again from a holistic perspective. You see that the coercion approach, if was taken, the Dow Chemicals, though it was actually enforced in the courts, but it still bargained with the residents, and it bought the land from the people of the entire town, which was adversely affected by the chemicals spilling into the drinking water, and it resulted in the whole town being abandoned. So that is not the actual solution actually. So if even though chemicals had money to buy the residents, that has not resulted in actual environmental pollution reduction. Same thing was about Georgia Gulf Company. These are all fossil fuel companies. Exxon, Shell, all these companies, they are reportedly bought properties near their chemical plants and refineries. Okay, so if it was lucrative for the polluter to pollute, it simply went on polluting it, and it simply offers some compensation to the stakeholders. So that way, the Gaussian approach is not very effective in dealing with the pollution problem from a holistic perspective. So this is another slide where it shows that Exxon and Shell, they started purchasing, but this purchasing or the bargaining didn't happen voluntarily. Though the claim is it happens voluntarily, but it didn't happen voluntarily. People had to go to the court, fight a court battle, and get made sure, and the courts enforce the property rights, and then and there, the bargain price was lucrative to the polluting. So all these case studies which I have compiled, they basically point out the same thing, that though ideally what is expected is that people voluntarily bargain, but what happens is usually uh, the people who are adversely affected go to the courts, and then some settlement is worked out, and the settlement is often in the form of people having to be permanently displaced, though compensation is given to them. So this is a limitation of Gaussian theorem. So to summarize the critique of Gaussian theorem, what are the limitations of Gaussian theorem? We have, as we have seen in this above case studies, decision is generally taken in the interest of richer sections of the society, powerful companies, as in our case, Shell, Mobile, then the other company, Georgia Gulf, Exxon, all these companies. So the decision was taken in the interest of these powerful companies, and only by considering the short-term profits. The second thing is we also saw that though the Gaussian approach actually says that there is no need of government intervention, but you see that there is a government intervention in the enforcement of the property rights. So government has to take the side uh, with the societal needs, and it has to make sure that the property rights are enforced, especially the property rights of the people who are weak. The third thing is we don't know whether the bargaining, which we had discussed in our case studies, was really fair or not, because generally when we talk about bargaining, the bargaining has to be between two equals. If one party is strong, other party is weak, then it might happen that the bargaining is not fair. The last point also mentions that the farmers, for example, which were evicted from land by the companies, they were not offered a competitive market because it was one company buying their land. If there were many companies buying their land, then the farmers would have received a competitive price. But if the farmers are evicted from land by a corporate, a single corporate, then it might also be a monopsony. Monopsony means in which a market situation in which there is only a single buyer, often leading to the exploitation of the people who are evicted from land. So these are the limitations of Gaussian theorem uh, as compared to the Pigovian approach, right? I hope you understood the Gaussian theorem well, and also when this Gaussian approach could be beneficial in analyzing and tackling externalities, and when it will not work. Thank you.
Friends, we have already looked into one solution, the market approach of controlling the externalities like air pollution. So, that approach we discussed at length was the approach of Arthur Pigou. He suggested government intervention in the form of Pigovian taxes if there is a negative externality. he suggested the intervention in the form of Picovian subsidies when there is a positive externality. So we can call this as an economist solution. The other solution which we discussed at length was the solution proposed by Ronald Coase, and we looked into what is known as the Coase theorem. So that this is also a market-based solution. However, in the Coase theorem solution, or the solution proposed by Ronald Coase, the government intervention is not important. It is the market solution, but here the government intervention is not there. The third solution, which we will be discussing in this lecture, is what is known as the command and control solution for controlling externalities. Now, why are we discussing this in environmental economics course? When you understand what is a command and control approach, you might wonder why it is called as a command and control approach, and why should it be in this course on environmental economics. Because in the command and control approach, we are not using any market principles for solving the problem of, say, air pollution, or the problem of even positive externality, right? So what is that solution? The solution is, the government intervenes, and it intervenes not in the form of taxes or subsidies. It simply says that you cannot do this, or you must do this. So if there is a negative externality, the government says that you cannot do this, and if there is a positive externality, the government says that you must do this, right? So government is commanding and controlling the externality. It is commanding and controlling the environmental goods or environmental bads. So that is what is known as command and control approach. There are many government interventions in the form of command and control approaches. One of the popular command and control approach, which all of us are aware, are the standards set by the government for the vehicle industry, right? So the standards are emission standards. In Europe, they are known as Euro norms. You have EPA norms in USA. You have Bharat norms in India, and so on. So what are those norms? So these norms are simply regulations, or the cap on the vehicle emissions for different categories of vehicles: cars, trucks, other transportation sources, right? And they simply say that, okay, if there is a particular vehicle in Euro 6 norm, and if it is run on petrol, that is gasoline, the carbon monoxide should not exceed so and so. The unburned hydrocarbon should not exceed so and so. The NOx emissions should not exceed so and so. The particulate matter should not exceed above a certain limit, right? So this kind of approach, where the government is prescribing, right, and it is saying that no way you are allowed to exceed these norms. That is a command and control approach. As I was saying, that there are many emission standards, and it is not simply followed by one or two countries. Even the countries which are popularly known as market economic countries, they use this vehicle emission standards. United States, as I was saying, that the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, it sets the emission standards for its vehicles. There is a Clean Air Amendment Act of 1990, which is mandated means compulsory, command, okay, mandate, compulsory, command, stricter emission standards for cars and trucks. As I was saying, in Europe, there are Euro standards, Euro 6 standards. For example, they put very strict limits on nitrogen oxide emissions from diesel vehicles. So all countries, market economic countries, they have vehicle emission standards, and they could be taken as an example of command and control approach.
Uh, Similarly, another popular command and control approach to take care of environmental problems is known as zoning laws. You'll often find that a municipal corporation or a local government would prescribe some locations. We would say that uh, this is a location where there should be no industries. This is a location where there should be only open spaces for gardens, right? And then the government would say that this is a lake or this is a river, and at the coastal regions you cannot build houses. So such kind of regulations are there. They are known as zoning regulations to control the location of industrial facilities, to control the other sources of pollution, to minimize the impact on residential areas, to minimize the impact on sensitive ecosystems and vulnerable populations. So these are known as zoning laws and land use planning laws, and these are again the government intervention in the form of command and control method to take care of environmental problems. So here there is no economist coming into picture and saying that you tax this and tax that. Okay, it is simply that you cannot do this. That's it. So another examples, as I was saying, that there is a limit to the height and density in buildings, right? For residential, you cannot cross a particular height. For commercial, you cannot cross a particular density and height that way, right? So maximum building heights or how many dwellings could be there per acre. All these regulations are helping preventing the construction of very tall buildings and very high density housing societies. Same thing goes in floodplain zoning, where in flood prone areas you cannot do lot of construction or development work, right? Um, Another command and control approach which is popular is in energy conservation, where you'll find that there are mandates by the government to manufacture the energy intensive instruments or consumer goods, uh, and specify their consumption with the help of some energy rating, right? For example, here I have shown uh, 4-star energy rating equipment or 5-star energy rating equipment, and this energy rating equipment has to this energy consuming equipment has to have these star ratings and has to specify how much energy it is consuming per year. Okay, so these are known as technology mandates. So the mandates for the use of cleaner technologies and pollution control measures in specific industries is an example of command and control approach. Here you are not giving cheap electricity, or you are not providing costly electricity as a solution, right? Here you are not allowing the industry and consumers or industries and other stakeholders to bargain. So it is neither using a Pigovian approach, nor it is using a Coisen approach. It is simply saying that this is the mandate. You have to manufacture a good to this energy standard. That's it. So this is a technology mandate. Uh, one more popular example of technology mandate is for the power plants, especially the coal power plants, which are now required in some countries to install a carbon capture technology. Okay, this is to take care of the emissions from the coal-based power plants. So it is expected now the power plants should install the carbon capture technologies, and that should lead to carbon sequestration and tackle global warming, right? So all these issues, one few more examples I will give before I close this command and control approach. Uh, this United States, for example, EPA again has a mercury and air toxic standard, again under the Clean Air Act, which mandates, which makes the coal power plants to install pollution control technologies. And which are those? Like flue gas desulfurization system, fabric filters, and these are to take care of the mercury and other hazardous air pollutants. So here you see that the government is not saying that let the power plant negotiate with the people around there, right? Which would normally be an approach taken by Ronald Coase. Or here the government is saying that, okay, not saying that if you are not using a particular grade of coal, we would tax the coal, right? Low grade coal. That is not the government is doing. It's simply saying that it is mandatory for the coal fired power plant to install the pollution control technologies without looking into its economics, right? So such kind of technology mandates are necessary in some environmental problems. European Union Eco Design Directive, where I was saying that there are certain energy efficient technologies and practices for household appliances, lighting, industrial equipment, where that design, that mandatory threshold of energy consumption is required. Okay. Ban on hazardous substances again is a case where you would find the government simply bans, there is a blanket ban on use of certain hazardous substances that pose significant risk to human health and environment. Okay, so these command and control approaches, though they are not related to Arthur Pigot's suggestion or Coase's suggestion, are still widely adopted by not only the countries which are command economies but also the countries which are market economies. So even in United States or European Union, where the economy is operated on capitalist principles, market economic principles, you'll find that command and control approaches have been used for environmental problems. Okay, thank you very much. Hi everyone. We are discussing cap and trade mechanism, and we would try to understand the cap and trade mechanism which is in place in European countries. A very beautiful figure which explains what is cap and what is trade is seen over here on the slide. Look at this, the dotted line over here. It is a cap. Cap means the limit, and it is the limit on emissions. So the dotted line would reflect the emissions cap. So let us say that the government establish a emission cap or puts a limit on the amount of pollution that can be discharged. It could be discharged to a river if it is water pollution. It could be discharged into the air if it is air pollution. The government then distributes some permits. Permits means allowances, which is in a way permissions, which allows them to pollute up to a certain extent, right? So that is what is called as a permit. Permit means permission to pollute. So each permit represents the right to pollute a certain amount of pollution. Now, if a firm can reduce its pollution below this allotted limit, then it would have some excess of permits, or it would have some unused permits, right? And if there is some firm which is unable to reduce the the pollution, then it would have used permits which are more. So this creates a market for pollution permits, because then it is not simply a cap but it is also a trade. It allows a trade of the pollution permits. So that is cap and trade. You have put a cap and then you allow the trade of a pollution permit, where the firms can buy the permit or sell the permit as need be to meet their cap, to meet their pollution targets. So let us say, as the figure shows, that there is a factory A and there is a factory B. So the factory A, let us say, can reduce its pollution, and factory B cannot reduce its pollution. And let us say that the government establishes a cap of 100 units of pollution, and it distributes about 100 pollution permits, each permit giving the holder the right to discharge one pollution per day. So if, let us say, the factory A is discharging only 50 permits for 50 units of pollution, so it means that it has now 50 unused permits, right? Unused permits. So it has some excess of permits which the factory A or enterprise A can sell. Okay, who would buy this? Obviously the factory B. Why factory B? Because the factory B cannot reduce its pollution, right? So the factory B is permitted to buy this emissions. In this scenario, the factory A can sell its unused 50 permits to factory B, and factory B can continue polluting, right? So the factory B can continue polluting because factory A can more efficiently reduce its pollution, and overall the total pollution would remain within the emission cap, right? So this is what is cap and trade. So by using this tradable permit system, the government can ensure that the pollution cap is met while allowing firms to determine the most cost effective way to reduce their pollution levels. And this, the claim, would promote economic efficiency, and simultaneously it would protect the environment. Okay, so the claim is that the cap and trade mechanism would effectively reduce the pollution and not harm the economy. That is what the case. So the famous, the most widely used cap and trade mechanism is in European Union, and it is called as a European Union's emissions trading system, in short EU ETS. It is one of the main tools with which the European Union hopes to combat the global warming, to reduce its greenhouse gases. So this European Union emission trading scheme is a cap and trade system, which means it sets an overall limit on the total volume of greenhouse gas emissions, and it also allows the trading of the allowances. So which are the sectors which are covered under European Union emission trading scheme? So around 10,000 industrial plants and power stations, as well as approximately 390 aircraft operators across the member countries of European Union. They are covered under European Union ETS scheme. Okay, so this is about introduction to cap and trade mechanism, which has been tried out in European Union countries. Thank you very much.